We're here and we're bringing you this career leadership panel. We've been doing a couple of these at different colleges, and our big thing is that we just want to share some of the knowledge that our supporters have with the students as you guys are graduating. We know it's kind of a rough time to be looking for jobs, but you can be really creative about the way that you put together your career, and these guys have been gracious enough to share their experiences, but also give you guys some tips, so hopefully you'll enjoy. This is Erin, who's going to introduce the panel for you.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Aaron. I work for APSS, I'm a fellow. So I'm with this lady who I'm going to introduce. She's very passionate for API leadership. She's been working for LEAD for the past 21 years. She has been the president and CEO for over a year now. Without further ado, Linda Kudergawa.
Thank you very much. So this is going to be very cool. Well, first off, we were all just kind of talking because we weren't sure, when we were going to start. So one of the things we were kind of commenting on is the fact that you all are here on a Friday night. So we were pretty impressed by that because, the fact that you are so committed to wanting to really think about what your future is going to be about and taking advantage, really taking advantage of an opportunity that you have to potentially not only meet some new people, but also perhaps to gain some new ideas that you could use post-college, and in terms of figuring out maybe what you want to do, where you might be able to think about in terms of a potential career. I won't say it's the only career, but a potential starting career. And so, I know for all of us, we're just, very much pleased to be here and to be able to have this time with you. So I have three really, really fabulous panelists, and I think that you're going to be in for a great treat. I want to also say up front, now, while we're here, in terms of the panelists, my role is just to facilitate the conversation. Their role is they're going to share their experience and the wisdoms that they've learned in the time that they've been doing the work that they've been doing. And what I found out is that, different varying kind of lengths in terms of time, in terms of their time outside of college once they've graduated. But I think all have accumulated different kinds of wisdom and experiences that hopefully you'll be able to learn from. And so with that in mind, I want to encourage you, I want to kind of really say, take the time, take the opportunity to ask questions. Don't be shy. If you have something that you want to ask, it could be something that everybody else is going to want to ask. You're going to have the opportunity to talk to each one in a more intimate setting because they'll all be joining you at the tables. But if there's something that you might want to ask someone because you may not sit with that person, ask the question now because that'll make this a much more, not just us talking to you kind of thing, but it will really be much more of a conversation and hopefully something that you'll be able to take away some new insights and hopefully not only awareness, but maybe some inspiration as well too. So without me going on any longer, I would like to have each person introduce themselves, and they've been instructed to answer some specific questions, so it's going to be longer than their normal introduction. So I want to just give you that heads up. So Phil, I'm going to go ahead and start with you, and if you need this, it is there for your use.
So first of all, is this working? Yes. Okay. So thank you, Linda, and very happy to be here tonight. I'm also very happy to know that a lot of you have given up some of your time, not only on Friday night, but a Friday night during March Madness. So I know it's been tough for me to get away from the TV yesterday and today. So Linda asked us to tell a little bit about our story and who we are and how we got to where we are. So my name is Phil Bangayan, and I'm Director of Marketing at Universal Studios Hollywood. And everyone always asks me, okay, so how do you get to do marketing for a theme park? And I have a very convoluted story for that. But, so first, I came from a very conservative Asian household, and I went to a very small Catholic high school. So for me, what was very important in college was to find a really big place and find myself. So I went to UCLA, I studied electrical engineering, and at that point, I tried to get involved as many things as I could. One of the things that I got involved with was the Engineering Society of UCLA, which opened up a ton of doors. I also got very involved with the Engineering Career Placement Center. In fact, I still keep in contact with the person who ran that career center. And I also got involved with UCLA Athletics. I was the webmaster for UCLA Athletics from 94 to 96. But being an engineering student in Southern California, I figured there were only two places I would ever want to work. One was NASA, Jet Propulsion Lab, because who would want to land a spacecraft on Mars? And the second was Walt Disney Engineering, because who wouldn't want to go ahead and build theme park rides for a living? So when I graduated, I was very lucky. I went to NASA, and then from there, I went to a defense contractor called Rockwell. And I was a very happy engineer, until one day, one of my bosses tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Phil, could you help us write some grant proposals?" And I said, "Sure. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll be happy to help out." So we won $250,000 on our first proposal. We won $500,000 on our second proposal. And then we wrote and lost a $25 million grant proposal. And it was at that point I realized, I really don't know what I'm doing. Because in engineering school, they teach us how to write good software, how to design good circuits, but they don't teach us how to beg for money. And at that point, it was about 2000, and I figured, okay, if this is what I want to do for a living, I want to go and learn it correctly. So I decided to go off to business school. And when I was applying, the dot-com bubble hadn't burst yet. So when I was applying to schools, people said, "You've got an engineering degree, you're going to get an MBA. People are going to beg you to work for them." To which I said, "Sign me up, I'm coming to business school." Then the dot-com bubble burst, and when I went to the recruiting events where they're trying to get us to come to their business school, they said, "Well, okay, the economy's going to be bad for 2 years. Why don't you come here for business school? By the time you graduate, the economy will be doing well again, and you'll still get your six-figure signing bonuses." I said, "Okay, that sounds great." So I started business school in August 2011. My second week of business school at MIT was September 11th. And you remember all those steak and lobster dinners I was promised? Got none. 0 of those. And then, so that was a really bad time to be in business school. And then come December, there was this white stuff that falls from the sky in Boston. Now those of you who are from Southern California, have lived here all your life, may not know it, but some of our panelists do. And I realized I really hate snow. And when recruiting season came around, I realized it was tough for me to look bankers and consultants in the eye and say, "Please hire me." And it really wasn't me. So I had to ask myself, what is it that I really want to do? And one of the things I came up with is I want to get back to warmth. And another thing I said was, that whole Imagineer thing, that might be worth checking out. So I helped organize a trip for business school students to come back to Southern California, visit all the studios, and eventually find jobs. But I didn't know how to do that. So I asked one of my classmates, who was a year ahead of me, if he could help give me guidance on this trip. And he had done this before, so he went ahead and gave me that advice. And it turned out that he was a big fan of a show called West Wing. And he came on our trip, and when we went to the lots of Warner Brothers, we stood on the set of West Wing, and he thought he died and went to heaven. And when I went to the backstage at Disneyland, I thought I died and went to heaven. And when he graduated, he got himself a job at Disneyland. And so when I graduated, I figured I'd hit him up and see if I can get a job at Disneyland. I applied for a job. It took a while for me to get that job. I actually got my first interview in January. The hiring manager said he'd get back to me. I stayed in touch with the recruiter. I made a pact with her that I would call her back every 2 weeks. And over time, I really got to know her. Until sometime in April or so, she finally gave me a call and said, "Phil, I'm really sorry that this hiring manager is taking a long time, but I think I have a job that you'd be really good for. Can you come in and interview?" So I came in and interviewed Monday, 11:30, and by 2 o'clock, I had myself a job at Disneyland. From there, I started in the finance group. I wrote the plan for Mickey's trick-or-treat party, which I think is now called Mickey's Halloween Treat. And then I got tapped on the shoulder again, and I was asked if I can come to do marketing. So I thought about it for a while, and I said, okay, I'll go ahead and take this risk. And I started in the marketing department. I ran the annual pass program at Disneyland, and then I went on to do marketing analytics. And then I got a call from one of my former coworkers who said, we have a job we think you'd be really good at Universal Studios. We want you to run our annual pass program. And that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years. We've hit all-time record highs last year when we opened Transformers. And so it's been a wonderful run. Now, I tell it in this way for a specific reason. First, we're in the entertainment industry, so we always tell a story. Second, I want you to think about how do you quantify the achievements you've made in life. So I told you about the size of the grants we won. I told you about how much money I brought to Disneyland, and I told you how much. And I told you we hit record highs over at Universal. Third, stay in touch with your classmates, or stay in touch with your friends. You never know who's going to be able to help you out in life. If it wasn't for the fact that I had a classmate ahead of me who landed in Disneyland, I wouldn't have been able to get the career that I did. And finally, or actually fourth, stay in touch with that recruiter. Because if I didn't keep on calling her every 2 weeks and getting to know her on a more personal level, she would never have called me and asked if I wanted to interview for a job. And finally, be aware when people tap you on the shoulder. They may see something new that you don't see yourself, and you could be quite successful when you take those kinds of risks. Okay?
Okay. Wow, that was great.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Loyola Marymount. I am originally from Oakland, California, actually, so I'm Northern California. Yay! Northern California. Having an awesome time in LA. So my story, I went out to college in New York, where it was cold and blizzardy. But I wanted to get far away, to a place that was different from where I grew up in the Bay Area. There's a little bit of a bubble, and California in itself is a little bit of a bubble. So one of the tips and recommendations I have for anybody who's, from California who hasn't gotten out to the East Coast or the Midwest or wherever, or the South, is to really go to those places and learn about different parts of the country because they operate completely differently. New York is a whole crazy beast, and it's also amazingly fun. So it's a great place to be and learn. And actually, I went to Columbia University, but really a lot of the education that I gained there was from engaging the city, and that's partly why I chose to go out there. And you guys are in LA, an incredible city where so much is happening. You be learning while you're here, learning academically, but also learning in the real world. And so you have an incredible opportunity to do that. So I definitely recommend, go into internships, work with, a lot of the organizations and businesses that exist in LA. You have a real opportunity, so you should definitely take it. So I went out to New York. I graduated in 2003. I majored in urban studies and Asian American studies with a focus in anthropology. And, when I graduated, I think the economy was starting to kind of get in trouble a little bit. And so people told me when I graduated, you're going to apply for lots of jobs and you're not going to get them, and it's not about you. You are amazing, and it's about the economy, and you just have to keep your head up and keep on going. And that's basically what I did. Right out of college, I worked at cafes and restaurants, just kind of hustling and doing what I love, which is I got involved in community organizing out in New York. There were a lot of issues going on. It was after 9/11 and a lot of immigrants' rights issues. And so I basically, worked in service and then kind of followed my heart and went into community organizing. And one of the things I wanted to share is that my dad, I think when I was 9 years old or something, was follow your heart, do what you love, because then you're going to be really, really good at it, and you'll succeed. And people will see that you're good at what you love, and you'll do really well. Rather than, going into the easy fields where you can make a lot of money, but you don't really love it, and eventually you're going to change fields anyway, because you're going to hopefully follow your heart and figure out what it is that you really want to do with most of your time, your 40 hours a week. So I got bribed to come back to California by my parents because they wanted me closer, and went into youth development, youth leadership development, community work in Oakland, where we have a lot of challenges. and kind of continue to explore. And I think one of the things I want to recommend is to stay open and follow your instincts, you know, take opportunities, be really open to different kinds of things. I think right now, you know, the friends who I have who are having a hard time getting jobs are people who are not as open. They're not open-minded to, you know, trying a new field that they have no idea what to do, taking a risk, you know, jumping into a field that, you know, is brand new, or you think that you don't have any skills, but you can totally learn it on the job. So that is definitely something I want to emphasize. And so I'm in politics, and I like to come to these things and encourage, especially Asian Americans, to consider public service and also politics as one pathway. It's incredibly, incredibly important. We're underrepresented in a lot of government. Right here in LA, we don't have 1 out of 15 Asian American city council members, so we have very little leadership and representation, which to me is really sad. Asian Americans make up about 11% or so of LA, but we don't have a city council member to represent our interests. So there's one race going on in District 13, if anybody lives in Echo Park or Silver Lake, where John Choi could be the first Korean American on the city council and the only Asian American. So that's a pretty big race we're working on right now. And I actually came from a political family, so I was kind of trained since 3rd grade to be in politics. But I did not want to go into politics because I saw up close how crazy it was. I ended up kind of coming back to it, partly because I think sometimes destiny chooses for you what you should be doing. I think that we're given to our parents, and you know, we're kind of led on a path sometimes that we don't necessarily think we want to do, but all of the skills that I've developed over the many years that I've been working, I think, have led me into this field, and I've decided that I do love it, and I'm really good at it. So I work at SG&A Campaigns. It's in Pasadena. It's one of the top political firms in California and probably the country. You know, they ran Villaraigosa's race. There are a lot of people who win their races, and a lot of progressives, mostly progressive Democrats. Mostly people who actually don't have a lot of money, but they can kind of be the underdogs and really be smart about strategic politics and get really good people into politics, right? I think especially our generation is a little bit wary of politics because of a lot of the, you know, the dirty politics and all the money that's involved. But I think it's still really worthwhile for people to go into it. There's not many Asian American political consultants, and so I met with Congresswoman Judy Chu the other day, and she's saying, look, there's not that many Asian American consultants. We need people who understand our communities, know how to talk to our communities, and can engage in our communities in voting. You know, people of color are generally really underrepresented, right, in voting. And generally, for these municipal elections, there's only about 16% turnout, right, in March 5th. That was really sad. Up in the Bay Area, up in Oakland, we're at about 75% turnout for municipal elections. Of course, that's during the regular November elections. So LA has off-season elections, but still, 16 to 20% of people choosing who your mayor is and who your city council members is a pretty big deal. So, you know, I think LEAP and some of the other Asian American groups in the city do some great work, kind of voter engagement and really making sure, you know, immigrant communities and Asian Americans really understand what's at stake, because we're often affected because we're not represented. So I actually came down from Oakland. I drove down with a carload of stuff and basically decided to work on the elections for this cycle down here in Pasadena, not really knowing many people in Southern California, and just took that risk and took that leap to say, okay, I'm going to try this, working with this top firm. It's a great opportunity. And you know, it's turned out really great. I really love it. I think they asked us, you know, what's the thing that you love about your job, and really we make a huge impact. The people who decide, you know, how the budget of LA, which is so huge, I don't even know how much money is divvied at, the kinds of services that are provided to our communities. These are huge decisions that affect our daily lives. And we really actually get to make a huge impact on that. So, well, that's it for now, and then I'll let conversation go.
One more, Christabel.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm Christabel Salazar. I first wanted to thank LEAP for inviting me. I'm somewhat indebted to LEAP because they actually literally helped to launch my career. I was a member of their Leadership in Action program, so I was an intern immediately after college, but I'll get to that in a minute. My family, for fear of feeding stereotypes, my dad's in the Navy, my mom was a nurse, I'm Filipino. Grew up in San Diego. We only had to move around once, so for the most part, I was a San Diego, Southern California girl. I went to college at UC Riverside, and there was the expectation that I was going to become a lawyer or a doctor. So, that's not what happened. I was a person in high school that planned the prom, that planned all our senior activities. In college, I was really involved with the Filipino Club. I was really involved with Asian Pacific student programs. I planned the PCNs, the Filipino Culture Nights. I choreographed the dance. That was me. I was that person. I realized that you can actually make a career out of this, like event planning and, doing these things. We did conferences for high school students. I mean, those kinds of, community service-oriented things can actually be a career. And so I ended up choosing a major. It was sociology. It was called Sociology Administrative Studies. There are majors that you can kind of form to meet what you want. And so it's a combination of business and sociology, because I didn't have PR, which is public relations, which is what I wanted to pursue eventually after a couple years of college, after I realized when I chose my college before, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And who knew that all that experience from high school and college would help me get the internship? I mean, only 8 people were selected after, I don't know how many applications were received. And so I think that helped, get me accepted into the program. I was placed at PhilArts. It's the Association for Advancement of Philippine Arts and Culture. They get some shout outs. They're based in the Filipino town in Echo Park. I was an intern there. I helped with the Festival of Philippine Arts and Culture. I'm from San Pedro. I feel like I'm a public service announcement right now. Just plugging all of these nonprofit organizations. They couldn't hire me immediately after. I got a job at an architecture firm doing their marketing, and I was assistant to the executive. Ended up contacting a recruiter, and I got a position at a PR firm here called the Rogers Group, which I think they just got acquired, so the Rogers spin now. I spent a year there, and eventually a position opened up at PhilArts, and I was hired on as their festival director. So I stayed there for a few years. It was, the time of my life, I feel like. And the people that I had met are some of my best friends now, some of my mentors that I continually reach out to, people that I met through LEAP. They really stay with you, and they really are your village when you need, support, professionally, emotionally, whatever, to help you with work-life balance, all those various things. I did try the corporate arena again. I went back to the fashion. I didn't go back, but I entered the fashion industry. I was working for a shoe company called Seychelles. Realized again that it wasn't for me, so I looked for more nonprofit jobs. My heart was just, I had a child, my first boy. He's now 8 years old, so he just turned 8 last week, so I can't believe it. And so I felt like the time I'm spending away from him, I really want to make sure I'm using it as valuable as possible. So I got hired at Break the Cycle. That was just a pure luck thing. I didn't have any connections or whatever, but it was, again, one of the turning points for me. I was there for 6 years. I was started as a grant writer. I realized how important writing is. And so if there's any, I took a lot of I almost minored in creative writing. If there's any opportunity to practice, to, I know there are essays and papers, but if you can actually use it in a practical way, it's really, really, I think that's a big skill that I've used in all of my various positions, from PR to nonprofit to grant writing. I mean, all of it writing has been the key skill that I've maintained throughout all of it. But I eventually moved up the ranks, and I left there as the director of development, doing events, writing grants, and the former executive director there had left and got a position at this company called Roll Global, which I'm pretty sure nobody knows what Roll Global is, but you might know what Fiji water is, or palm tea, or if you eat pistachios, you saw the Get Crackin' campaigns and all those. They own, a wide range of companies. And she got the job there as the director of philanthropy. So instead of raising money, she was giving money away to charity. And I was like, interesting. She had an opportunity to restructure, and she basically stole me away from Break the Cycle and recruited me to join her. So now I'm the foundation director there at Roll, and I literally cut checks to nonprofits, mostly in California and Los Angeles, but all over the country. We also do work in Fiji, Central Valley of California, and it's a very, very rewarding, very fulfilling position. But again, because I was on the other side, I know that I want to be the type of funder that is responsive and really listening and helpful to these, various nonprofits that are trying to just keep their lights on and pay their rent. Because when I was director of development, I got the promotion to that position right when the economic downturn happened. So it was very awesome timing. I'm trying to look at the questions. I guess things that I would have done differently, or advice that I would have, is definitely travel. I wish I studied abroad. I mean, I had friends that did it, and I have a coworker that his son's now in college, one at Harvard, one went to UC Santa Barbara, whatever. Studying abroad is like one of the best things that they've ever done. And traveling and experiencing, because this is the time when you can do it, where your parents will support you in it, or whatever. It's a whole other story when you're on your own and you have to travel. I feel like I wish I did more internships. So my first internship was the lead internship. I didn't do any other internships before that. So I do encourage as much as possible to look out there and see what it's like, because you get to really experience what it's like to do the day-to-day of these different positions without being fully committed and having to stay there, for whatever reasons, for money or whatever. Like, it's a really good experience to just intern. Actually, we got a lot of interns when I was at Break Cycle from LMU. I think we even hired one of our interns. So it's really good to intern and build your network that way. We work with the Bells here, I think. The LMU Bells, yeah. So, I feel like that's it. I'm sure that there'll be other questions. But again, thank you so much for having me.
All right, so, wow, that was so interesting. I mean, well, one, I got to learn a lot more about everybody here. But, everybody had a little something different to say. And I was taking a lot of notes, partly because I'll forget everything that they said. Senior moments happen a lot more often nowadays. But I think there were some really interesting things, and some of the things that I think that I thought was really interesting that seemed to have come out in all three of your stories, but in different ways, was really around this this theme of risk-taking. And I think I want to start with that, just in terms of, and it may not have seemed like risk-taking at the time that you were doing all these things, but it does seem to be, this kind of idea that you are willing to try new things and take chances, and part of it is from your involvement in school and other things like that. Did that help you to be more comfortable with trying new things and, taking those risks, or did you just not even think about it? You just thought that was the right thing to do? Let me just hear from you.
I'll be happy to answer that. The way I found out that it's useful to take risks by not taking risks earlier in life. And actually this fits in very well with what you're saying about defining yourself too narrowly. When I was in college, I studied a lot of electrical engineering, and I specialized in a field called speech signal processing. So those are people who study that field, learn about how to do telephony, learn how to do speech recognition systems, learn how to go ahead and do coding for audio as well as video. And I thought, okay, well, this is what I studied, this is what I have to do when I get out of college. In the meanwhile, there was a company that was starting up at UCLA. It was by a guy named Henry Samuel. He had co-founded a company called Pairgame. And it was a company founded by 4 people. He and one of his partners had a falling out with the other 2 partners, and so they started a new company, which they called Broadcom. And they were looking for circuit designers. And I said, well, yes, I've taken some circuit design classes, but I really am a speech person. Or at least another area called signal processing, which is what I did at JPL. And so I didn't really consider it. In the meanwhile, people who had come there to do their PhDs were leaving after the first year to join this company. In fact, my roommate, the guy I cooked dinner for, actually left and joined this company, and that company went public. And when it went public, Henry Samuel became the 3rd richest person in all of Orange County. And so I missed out on a major opportunity there because I was too afraid to take risks. And it surprised me because when I look back at my parents, they're immigrants. So they took the ultimate risk. They left their country to come here with nothing in their pockets. And they built everything from scratch. And so it would have been natural for me to be more of a risk taker, yet I found myself being risk averse, and it was because of that I realized, okay, when opportunity presents itself, I should look at it more closely, and if it's the right opportunity, I really should go for it.
I'll answer this question a little bit differently. So yeah, I flew out from California to New York City with no family, not really knowing anybody in New York City, and I think that in itself for me was like a pretty big risk. I mean, I love big cities, but it's, when you don't have family around, you don't know a lot of people, it can be a little bit scary. So I think going all the way across country and going to college in itself was a risk, and I actually went to public schools, in Oakland, which were not super great, and then I ended up at Columbia, where there were like really rich kids who went to the top boarding schools in the country, and I think that whole experience was a bit of a risk, really knowing and believing in myself that I could do it, and I could, be on par with these people who had all the privileges and resources in the world. So I think a lot of it is about, as you're in college, really learning that trusting yourself and your experience and your story and knowing what that is, because I think a lot of times, we don't know until maybe 30, who we are and what our story is and why we're valuable. I think the 20s is a good time to figure that out and to really explore who you are and what you're about and what you're made of. So I think that is kind of my takeaway in terms of, going to college in a place that, I had no idea what it was going to be like. And, New York City is such a kind of a powerhouse, and I learned quite a bit and really just had to, brave it, by myself in this huge city. And I think those experiences don't make you who you are, so you guys are at college and you're away from your families, and you need to take this opportunity to really, figure out what it is, who you are, and what it is that you really love to do in the world, and what kind of contribution you want to make to the world.
Well, I don't know if I took more risks. I feel like I chose my college because it was close enough to San Diego to go home, but far enough so I could live in the dorms. I got accepted at other colleges, but that's one of the main reasons why I chose it. I also liked that it was small enough, and I felt like I really could make an impact and a difference on campus. The class sizes are very small. I felt like I was able to build relationships, stronger relationships in that regard. But I don't. Taking risks, you have to be braver as far as, going up to people and making things happen, because you don't have, your parents advocating for you as they did in high school. You just don't have that kind of support system. So you do it on your own, and you learn very quickly, what it takes to really get things done.
right, the 20s are a really good time to figure out who you are. But I think since you're here at a Jesuit university, you actually have an opportunity that a lot of other people don't have, because you have to take, and maybe I'm making an assumption here, but I assume you have to take some theology courses. Everyone's nodding, so I mentioned that to yes. And in those theology courses, a lot of times it's very introspective, and you learn about yourself. As an engineer, I got really good at analyzing things. I could analyze a circuit, I could analyze code, I could analyze a bridge, but I didn't really have those classes that forced me to look inside myself and ask, who am I? Because you're here at this kind of university, take advantage of those courses. Take advantage of some humanities courses where this theme comes up often about who am I, and use that as your springboard in order to shape yourself for the rest of your life.
So I started out with that on purpose, the risk-taking part, because I think a lot of times, I think we don't think that we want to take a risk, especially if your parents are telling you, do the safe things, do the things that are going to be like the things that are, you're going to be always having a job or easy to get a job, and the things that are, kind of like the solid things. That's why being a doctor, lawyer, engineer is so easy, right? They could explain it to all their friends and then say, oh yeah, my son or daughter is a doctor, lawyer, engineer. Everybody understands what that is. And Christabel, I don't know if your parents understand how to explain your job.
No, I got the non-profit. So what, you make no profit? It was very difficult.
Oh yeah. I can tell all kinds of stories about what my dad said. But I did start with that because I wanted you all to be thinking about that. And so I want to transition to something a little bit different that you all talked about involvement on campus. And I think, to what you're saying, that being here at a Jesuit school, there is some aspect of service learning, I think, in your curriculum as well, too. I'm assuming that, right? Yes. Some of you may be doing it, or you're going through the motion, but hopefully you're doing it in a real way. But I think there's some lessons to be learned from that, and you all chose to do it. And I think what I'd like to have you share with the group is, what are some of those lessons learned, some skill sets specifically that you think you've been able to take into your careers?
Should we start the other end this time, or?
Yeah, sure.
Well, now that I'm remembering, when she brought up having to explain your job, I am remember that I did take a risk. I think I'm the only child of all of my siblings and of all of my cousins that actually moved out of the house and lives away from San Diego. I think most of my friends, between my mom and my dad, they have like 20 brothers and sisters, and I think I'm the only one that lives outside of San Diego. So that's, I think, really nice. Okay, so skill set that I took away from college and that I've been using throughout my career. I think I touched on it earlier, but writing has been a big one. Also in college, I started, a little embarrassing, spoken word and poetry, and so that helped a little bit with me, speaking in front of people, even though I feel nervous speaking in front of you all right now. But again, I really recommend, even if you're in the sciences and you're planning to be a doctor, you never know. Take a writing class, take a business class. We have a lot of strategic writing classes. Because if you can write persuasively, you can sell anything. You can sell a nonprofit, you can sell annual passes, you can sell a candidate. I mean, it all really just translates among, a wide range of fields.
But did your Filipino club experience, for example, help you with that in terms of like writing, or even like you were saying about the spoken word part too?
Yes, definitely. And also, I work at the rec center on campus at UC Riverside as well. So I work at the front desk, being able to just introduce yourself to new people, to be able to help. I feel like those kinds of skills, you never know who you're meeting and how much they might mean for your career later. I feel like the event planning, because that was my passion. So I was able to carry event planning with me from high school all the way through. I don't do it now in my current position, so now my kids just have awesome birthday parties and, help with baby showers and stuff. But no, seriously, it really because I was able to do that, I was able to plan a wide range of events and apply those skills to different fields. From the PR firm where we were working on, I did like an environmental conference for children, to the Filipino festival. When I was at Loyola Marymount, I also taught, dance because of my experience as part of the Filipino club and doing the culture night there. So you just never know. Opportunities present themselves in very odd ways.
Yeah, actually, I was a student organizer as well at Columbia. I was in the Asian American Alliance and 5 million other student groups. And I was mostly spending my time in student groups rather than in class and doing my homework. But I had a great time and actually learned a lot through those clubs. So definitely, I'd say working with different groups of people. People who are not from your background, I think is a key skill. Like being at Columbia, you meet, a really wide range of folks, at school. And, everybody from the richest people to low-income, folks and people with different cultural backgrounds. Being able to code switch, right? You hear that term code switch, right? You have to be able to go in and talk with the university trustees and also, go into Harlem and talk with communities there. Being able to know, how to present yourself and how to communicate with different people. And also to learn compassion about different communities who you may not want to talk to or you think you don't like that kind of person. Really trying to connect those things. I think college is a great place to do that. If you have stereotypes about anybody, really connecting with them and going outside of your comfort zones to learn about different kinds of people. Definitely research is a huge skill that I brought into a lot of my work. So just even from, I didn't want to take science classes, but they made me. But from those science classes, I learned, the methodology very well. And then, in anthropology, I learned a lot of interviewing skills and all of that. And then after college, I led youth-led research campaigns in the Oakland Unified School District, where we got students to learn how to do participatory action research and then help change the school district with that research. And we were actually able to pass a bunch of policies through that research. And then also definitely with campaigns and candidates, we have to do a lot of opposition research, and it's all like data, it's all analytics, it's all looking at voter numbers and turnout and demographics and all of this. And so, knowing those numbers, I didn't really love math in college. And so knowing that stuff was really, really critical, has been critical for my work. And also learning how to apply research to the real world, right? Because you can do a lot of research in your classes, but if you're not applying it to the real world, then you're not learning enough. If you can connect what you're learning in your classes and take it and work with a nonprofit or work with a business or whatever and apply those numbers and what you're learning or whatever you're interviewing, asking questions to what's going on here in Los Angeles, you will be much more prepared. And those projects that you do, those research projects that you do, you can use that in your work sometimes. So the thesis that I did on immigrant domestic workers organizing in New York City, I then worked with the Domestic Workers United Alliance in New York City, which is now a national organization of domestic workers, and they're doing incredible things with the research that we helped with. And then I was one of these students who in elementary and middle and high school didn't speak up at all in school. I was definitely the quiet Asian kid. And so college was a chance to really learn how to speak up and, represent myself. So I think in, the safe spaces of your classes where you only have, 15 people and you can learn how to speak up and share and present your ideas, I think those are really, really critical skills that you can then have confidence in yourself to go out to the real world and present yourself when you're trying to get a job or whatever it is you're speaking to hundreds of people. I did, during the summers in college, I learned how to teach. I did a program in the Bay Area called Aim High, and, facing 37th graders is the scariest thing in the world. So being able to present yourself and get them to do things, those kinds of skills and facilitating really well are skills that you can take anywhere. And then I was a super event organizer, and now we can organize campaign kickoffs like that. It's super easy. So those are definitely a lot of transferable skills.
Wow, great stories. So as someone who taught our CIA to 7th graders, I have to agree with you, that is the scariest thing out there. So things that I've learned that made transferable. First of all, I think we can all agree. And let me ask the audience this as well. How many of you have had to organize events? And how many times how often do you put a plan together for that? Okay, do you put a plan together for the event to organize?
Yeah.
Okay, raise your hand. Okay, at least a handful. And does the plan always work? Does everything? No. When I was an intern student at UCLA, we used to put together an annual show as a laser light show, and it never came to plan. And so something I learned really quick is how do you plan for the unexpected? And that has been one, how do you, first of all, put together a plan, and then how do you modify that plan, and how do you make sure that you're not so stuck to that plan, so that when the unexpected comes up, you're ready. You put in scenarios in case if something doesn't work out well. And that's a very useful skill to have, and I think we've all been in that situation. It sounds like some of you have as well. Another skill that has been brought up over here is the ability to write. And I will actually modify that a little bit from my experience because I've hired a lot of English and communications and history majors into the business roles, and I've actually found out that it's not just the ability to write and write persuasively, but it's the ability to go ahead and come up with a logical argument so people can go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, follow that train of thought, and do it concisely. And I didn't realize this at the time, but math is a really good foundation for that. So I have to put in my plug for math and science. And the reason why is because in math you have to do proofs. And in proofs, you learn how to go ahead and get from step 1 all the way to step 10 in a very logical and a very concise fashion. So the ability to plan and the ability to write concisely have been very useful skills for me to carry around in my career.
Okay, well, I've been given we're out of time. So before we totally just have you go out to all the tables, I'm going to just ask you each to give one very quick, short, 1, 2, 3 word kind of closing comments about, just some things. And you're going to get a chance to... Very concise, yes, very concise, because you're going to get a chance to talk to all of them, but, just maybe just some closing thoughts, advice, whatever that you want to share with the whole group here. So,
Wow, 1, 2, or 3 words?
yes. This is the Twitter version.
The Twitter?
Yes, 140 characters or less.
Know yourself, take advantage of opportunities.
I would say believe in yourself, intern a lot, build those relationships. Those relationships will follow you. The relationships that you create here, that's way longer. Relationships that you create here in college will follow you and will present themselves as opportunities for your career in the future.
What they all said. LinkedIn. I will say, get on LinkedIn, start your profile, get your recommendations. Breaking rules. Get your recommendations in there, have people endorse you, all of that happens on LinkedIn. Research, make sure you edit, read your stuff out loud, you catch things.